Okay, hello and welcome. So what I want to do in this video is show you how to set up a Ubuntu minimal install, similar to how we did in my previous videos with like Arch Linux, Void Linux, and Debian, where we're going to set up Ubuntu not with a GUI and not with an actual installer, but do it manually, similar to how you would do with Arch Linux, so that you can just have a very minimal system as a building block to start with. So what I'm going to use is the Ubuntu server ISO, but we're not going to actually use the installer from the ISO, just so that we can have an environment to boot into that will give us the tools we need to install it manually. Give it a couple more cores. I'm not going to need it, but we'll go ahead and give it 50 gig. And then we're going to customize because I want to see if I can get it to work on UEFI. And then we'll go ahead and boot that up. Move that over here. And we're going to go ahead and boot into the server install. Now this isn't going to install the server. It's not going to install any of the server software because we're not going to actually use the installer. Just the environment. You can go ahead and update the installer. There's really no reason to do it, but it's kind of neat that they provide that. So once you get to this point in the install, just keep hitting your tab button until you get up here to the help menu. Hit help and go to enter shell. And that will enter you into a environment where we can install the tools we need and configure our hard drive and our partitions and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to go ahead and try to make the fonts a little bit bigger so that hopefully we can see things. Hopefully that's not too big, but we'll see. All right. So one of the first things I want to do is go ahead and apt install Debootstrap. And that's the main tool you'll use to make a working environment for our system. Now, ignore all the loop devices. That's to do with snap, but our drive is the actual VDA, so I want to go ahead and set up my partitions. And we're going to use GPT. We're going to do a 1 gigabyte EFI partition. I'm going to go ahead and do just a 2 gigabyte swap, which really isn't needed, but why not? And of course, the rest of the drive will just be the Linux file system. And then we're done with that. Alright, now we need to set up the partitions. So we'll go ahead and do VFAT for our boot partition. Then we'll do swap for our swap partition. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. And then I'm going to just make ext4 for my main partition. Excuse me. And that will get our partitions set up. And now we want to mount those partitions, so we'll mount the dev VDA 3, which is our main partition, into mount. And then I'm going to make the directory for our boot partition into mount boot EFI. And then I'm going to mount my boot partition into that into that spot that I created. So now comes the magic. We can do Debootstrap, and we'll do Noble, and we will use Bootstrap knowable into mount, and that will, since it already had the it already had all the system information it needed for the packages, so I didn't have to type in manually the repositories. Couldn't think of the word there for a second. So since I'm doing it through this now, if you were doing it on a Debian system or something else, you would have to probably manually put in the repository information before it would actually retrieve and install this. So now it's retrieving just a very base system of Ubuntu into that partition that I set up, and it's taking quite a while. So, and when you do it this way, you're going to be able to have a very minimal system. So you will have to set up a lot of things manually, but it's not quite as bad as like Gen 2 or even Arch, really, because it still does quite a few things for you. But there's a couple little tricks you're going to have to do to get it to work correctly. And I hate that this is going so slow. I probably should have chose a different repository. That might have been faster. There we go. Now it's installing and extracting. Shouldn't take long. And if I'm not mistaken, the Arch install scripts are in the repositories, which would make setting up our fstab simpler. So I'm going to see if that's the case. I don't, off the top of my head, remember if that's in the repository or not. It may not be, because you may have to enable other things for that. But let me see if it is once we get this set up. Anytime now would be great. So we're not here all night. I mean, I guess I could technically pause the video, but I'm too lazy. And you know what? You get to see the whole process. It's a magical thing. Whew, okay, so there we go. And it changed my fonts again. Interesting. So we have the base system installed. I wonder if I can go ahead and redo the fonts again. There we go. Alright, so now that we have that installed, let me see, apt install arch install scripts. Are those there? Hey, they are there. That's pretty cool. So now we can just do our genfs tab, the exact same command you would use in Arch, and set that up. The same way, so that I get my partition set up correctly on the minimal system. Okay, perfect. Now one thing I'm wanting to do before I root into it is, let's see, let's just go ahead and do nano. We'll do nano mount etc apt sources list. So in my sources, it's not going to have everything we need. So I want to do main. We want to do, what is it, restricted universe and multiverse. That will provide you with all the things you will need. Oops. You know, I don't even know how to use nano. You know what? I forgot how to use nano. Is Vim installed? There we go. We'll use Vim instead. Oops. Alright. So let's just do this the easy way. We'll do Vim into our mount apt mount etc apt sources. Then we can go ahead and do main. Oh nope, not contrib. I'm thinking of Debian. So it's main restricted. What is that? Universe and multiverse. They use different naming conventions than Debian does. I'm going to copy this a few times. Whoops. So that I can get everything I need. So you'll want not only Noble, you'll want... Oops. I'll tell you what, I'm on it tonight. So we'll set up for updates. We will set up for security. And we will set up, sorry, I was reading something. We'll set up for backports. And that, if I spelled everything correctly, should give us everything we need in the repositories that we'll need to have the system functioning correctly. So now is the magic. As you can tell, I'm rustling papers here, trying to look at my notes. Okay, so now is the magic of... Is Archroot? Yeah. So that'll make trooting easier as well. So we can Archroot into it. Okay, and then I want to do an apt update to make sure we have all the repositories set up correctly. Alright, looks like I did, so I didn't misspell anything. And there's actually quite a few updates. Let's go ahead and do that. Apt update. Apt, you know what, we'll just do a dist upgrade. And that way we get everything brand spanking new, and it'll be up to date. And this is just in a, again, I'm using it similar like I would do Arch Linux, so you don't have to worry about the installer, don't have to worry about it installing extra packages you don't want and things like that. So it'll just have what you want and when you want it. Now I do believe with Ubuntu, with this LTS, it uses NetPlan. So if I'm not mistaken, to get Network Manager working correctly, I will have to set that up a little differently than I would in like Debian. And if I remember correctly, I just need to go to vim etc netplan, and then I want to make a file called network manager YAML. Oh, I don't have Vim on here. Well, then we'll just do NeoVim. I forgot I'm in the root environment. There we go. So let's go ahead and get NeoVim. Now I can do nvim etc netplan and then network manager.yaml. And we want to set up the network. We want it version 2, and you want the renderer to be network manager. That way the system will use network manager as our network interface. That should in theory work, if I'm not mistaken. So now we obviously can't boot into anything without a kernel. So if I remember correctly, we can do apt install Linux. What is it in Ubuntu? Linux image generic, and then Linux headers generic, and then Linux firmware. And I believe that will get us everything we need. Yeah, that looks good. That should get you your firmwares. There may be other firmwares you'll need, like Realtek. I think you may have to install separately, and a few others. But if you don't need those things, don't install them. The main Linux firmware should work in most cases. And that'll get the kernel. Now this will be the kernel that comes with the LTS version, which I think is like 6.8. You can update that kernel later to a mainline kernel or anything like that. You can use Xanmod or Liquorix or mainline or or anything like that to update that kernel if you need a newer kernel in Ubuntu LTS. Or you can do this same process in the newer. So like I say, I'm using the LTS version here. You can do the same thing in the latest interim version as well. They have a server image for it as well, and it will work just like the LTS version here does. So you can do the exact same process using that version. So we want to go ahead and install grub. Grub EFI. That should pull in our EFI partition that we need. I mean, not partition, the EFI. And then we'll just do grub install. We will do the EFI directory is boot EFI, and bootloader ID, we will call it Ubuntu, and that should work. Yep. And then we just do update grub, and that should have grub set up. Now we need to set password for our root account, and then we need to add a user. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and actually install a couple more packages. Get fish. Already did neovim, so I'll just get and fish right now. All right, now we're going to add a user. So we'll do user add Colby, that's me, and then we'll add us to the groups. Now they use sudo instead of wheel, don't they? So it's sudo audio video input, and then user bin fish, and then we'll do password for Colby, and that should have my my system set up for that. So let's go ahead and do sudo, and that way I can add this user to the yeah, see, there it is, admin group, or the sudo group. So it's already enabled, isn't it? Yeah, it's already enabled. Okay, so he's set up on sudo, so he's good to go. He should be able to use sudo. And if I haven't forgotten anything, which we'll find out when I try to reboot, this should just reboot and work. So let's go ahead and exit this. So we've exited the true environment, so we should be able to just reboot at this point. Yada yada. Alright, now let's see if it boots. Alright, there we go. Haha. So there we have it. A very minimal install of Ubuntu. I don't even know if it has yeah, it does, so we can go ahead and set that up. There we go. Now we got a little bit better font there, so we can do apt install sudo apt update, make sure, yep, all our network manager and everything is working. So we can do sudo apt install neofetch, get neofetch installed, and again, from here you have a very base minimal system. And I'm going to check, I don't think it installed snap. There is a way to make sure it doesn't install snap. I might do a video on how to do this minimal install and then make sure Snap never gets installed. I personally don't really care if it installs it or not, but a lot of people really don't want it. So, okay, yeah, see, Snap's not even installed. So you can disable Snap completely by using app pinning and make sure Snap doesn't get installed, because sometimes if you pull in other packages, Snap will get installed. But as it stands right now, there is no Snap or nothing like that on here. And from this point, you can install basically whatever you want. And there we have it. Wow, that is huge. But we have the Ubuntu. Yeah, we're running 6.8. And that's it. From here, you can install GNOME, KDE. You can install nothing and just have a very bare bones server. You can install, you know, your i3. You have just a blank canvas to do what you want to. I thank you for watching the video. If there's anything you guys want me to do and show you how to set up, leave me a comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll try to figure out which one I want to do next. I'm enjoying these minimal installs, so we'll toy around with some that I've already installed, and then maybe we'll do another, maybe like a Fedora or a Dev1 or maybe even a Gentoo. I'll have to set aside some time to set up a Gentoo because that's going to take a lot longer video, but we may do a very base Gentoo install as well. But hey, man, I appreciate you guys watching. God bless y'all, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.